The message arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday while Sarah sat quietly in the back of an Uber, heading to a board meeting her assistant had locked into her calendar weeks earlier. The family group chat, all 17 members, lit up with excitement. Her mother wrote, "Family dinner this Saturday at 6 p.m. We have wonderful news about Jessica's promotion." Jessica, the older sister, the golden one, the daughter who always made their parents proud. Sarah typed, "Can't make it. Work commitment." Replies arrived instantly, sharp, disappointed, and familiar. She slipped her phone into her bag, already knowing explanations never changed anything. Saturday came and went without her. While her family toasted Jessica's victory, Sarah sat in a quiet conference room with her CFO reviewing Q3 projections. LifeBridge Systems was preparing to close their Series D round, moving from a $340 million valuation toward $1.8 billion. They were months away from launching a breakthrough cardiac monitoring system that could transform post-surgical care. But none of that mattered at home. Her family only knew she worked in healthcare tech, a phrase they repeated with polite confusion. It had always been that way. They celebrated Jessica loudly, proudly. Sarah worked silently, unseen. It had started years earlier, when Sarah graduated from MIT at 23 with degrees in biomedical engineering and computer science. She'd been recruited by 6 companies with salaries between $180,000 and $240,000, but she chose a small medical startup paying $75,000 with 2% equity. Her parents were horrified. At Sunday dinner her father said, "You're wasting your education." Her mother added, "MIT graduates don't work at unknown companies." Meanwhile, her sister Jessica had a stable job, stable benefits, and a predictable salary. Sarah had nothing but a dream, a crowded warehouse office and ramen dinners 4 times a week. 3 years later, everything changed. The startup was acquired for $180 million, turning Sarah's quiet 2% into $3.6 million after taxes. She was only 26 and not one person in her family knew. They assumed she had simply switched companies again. While Jessica celebrated another corporate promotion, Sarah used her acquisition money to create LifeBridge Systems with 2 trusted colleagues. They believed patients were dying after leaving hospitals because no one monitored them closely. So they built an AI-powered system that could detect small changes in a patient's heart rate, blood pressure, and oxygen levels long before symptoms appeared. LifeBridge began in Sarah's small apartment. 3 founders, 4-hour naps, cold pizza, and stubborn hope. 2 years later they earned FDA approval for their first device. 4 years after that, they secured contracts with 147 hospitals across 18 states. By year 6, they had 412 employees and $180 million in annual revenue, with investors fighting for a chance to join their Series D round. Yet at family dinners, when someone asked what Sarah did, she answered softly, "I work in healthcare tech." Everyone would nod politely, then turn the conversation back to Jessica's new job title or Derek's updated resume. The photos from the family dinner arrived the next morning, sent by her cousin Rachel. In every picture, Jessica stood proudly in the center of the living room, holding a champagne glass while announcing her new role. Director of Product Strategy, salary $142,000. Their parents looked overjoyed. Her father raised his glass and said, "To our successful daughter." Derek posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "Some of us are really doing something with our lives." Sarah simply liked the post and turned back to her work. She'd long accepted that her success lived in silence. 3 weeks later, another family dinner was scheduled. This time on a Sunday at 5 p.m. Sarah arrived 15 minutes late after a tense call with her lead investor. She'd just spent 90 minutes negotiating the final terms for their Series D deal. When she walked into the kitchen wearing jeans and a sweater, Jessica raised an eyebrow and said, "Nice of you to show up." Sarah forced a small smile. "Traffic was bad." Jessica stared. "From where? Don't you work from home?" Before Sarah could answer, their mother called them to the table. "Pot roast again. 23 years of it." Dinner began with small talk until Derek leaned back and said, "So, Sarah, what exactly do you do every day?" She'd heard this question many times. "I work on monitoring systems, software, hardware, data analysis." Their mother nodded politely, clearly uninterested. Derek asked, "Do you manage anyone?" Sarah answered, "A few." Jessica laughed. "That's cute. I manage 15 people now. Full budget responsibility. Derek added, "What's your budget?" Sarah replied, "I don't really work with budgets." Technically true, she approved a $96 million one, but she didn't say that. They never asked the right questions. Her father folded his arms. "So you're more of a technical employee, not really management?" Sarah nodded. "Something like that." Jessica took another sip of wine. There's nothing wrong with being an individual contributor. Not everyone can handle leadership. Derek grinned. "How much are you making these days? 90? Maybe 100. Sarah kept her voice calm. "Enough." Her real salary was $285,000, plus bonuses and equity worth tens of millions. But she stayed quiet while her parents praised Jessica again for breaking six figures. It was strange, Sarah thought, how people could speak so confidently about a life they didn't understand. After dinner they moved to the living room for coffee and pie. Their mother pulled out photo albums filled with Jessica's graduation, Jessica's first apartment, Jessica's promotion party. Then she asked, "Sarah, do you have any pictures from work? What's your office like?" Sarah said, "It's nice. Pretty normal." Derek frowned. "Do you even have your own office? Tech places are all open rooms, right?" Jessica smirked. "I bet she shares a desk." Sarah just nodded. She didn't mention the corner office on the 8th floor overlooking the San Francisco Bay with her name on the door. Sarah Lane, CEO and co-founder. 6 weeks later, an invitation arrived from the Medical Technology Innovation Summit in Boston, the largest healthcare tech event in the country. Sarah's assistant forwarded the schedule with a note. "You're delivering the opening keynote this year. They're expecting 2,000 attendees." Sarah had spoken there before, but this year was different. This year she was the one opening the entire conference. She spent evenings rehearsing her 45-minute speech about how LifeBridge had reduced post-surgery deaths by 34%. It was her biggest stage yet, but she didn't mention it in the family chat. She knew exactly how they'd respond. 2 weeks before the conference her phone lit up again. Jessica wrote excitedly in the family group chat, "Guess what? My company is sending me to the same summit in Boston. All expenses paid. Huge for my career." Their mother wrote, "So proud of you, Jessica." Derek added, "You'll meet important people there." Jessica replied, "Last year the keynote was a big name from a billion-dollar company. I heard this year it's someone huge again." Sarah stared at the messages. She could have typed, "That's me." Instead she wrote, "Have fun. Sounds like a great opportunity." Jessica thanked everyone except Sarah. The night before her keynote, Sarah checked into the conference hotel overlooking the harbor. A welcome basket sat on the table with a handwritten note. "Thank you for inspiring our industry." She ordered room service, opened her laptop and reviewed her slides one more time. She thought briefly about texting Jessica to meet for coffee in the morning, maybe explain before everything became public. But then she remembered the years of comments. Real jobs, real careers, real salaries. She sighed, closed her laptop, and decided to let the truth reveal itself naturally. Silence had been safe for so long. The next morning she woke at 6, dressed in a navy-tailored suit and went downstairs. The ballroom was enormous. Rows of chairs stretching into shadows, a glowing 20-foot screen and cameras everywhere. The crew handled final checks while the conference director greeted her warmly. "We're honored you're opening the summit, Mississippi Lane. Your prep room is ready." At 8:20 the audience began filling in. Sarah watched from backstage as professionals in suits found their seats. Then she saw her. Jessica, row 7, seat 12, wearing a burgundy blazer, smiling, excited. She had no idea her sister owned the stage. At 8:58 the lights dimmed. A voice filled the room. "To open our conference, we welcome a leader who transformed patient monitoring in America." Sarah's professional headshot appeared on the giant screen. Her name followed. Sarah Lane, CEO and co-founder, LifeBridge Systems. Jessica froze. She stared at the screen, then at her program, then back again as the announcer continued listing achievements. MIT degrees, FDA approvals, 147 hospital partnerships, 2,847 lives saved. A colleague leaned over to her, whispering urgently. Jessica didn't move. She simply stared as the crowd rose to applause. Sarah stepped on stage to a standing ovation. Sarah delivered her keynote with calm confidence. explaining how early detection saved lives and how LifeBridge's AI analyzed 10,000 data points per second to spot invisible warning signs. She shared stories of patients who lived because the system acted before symptoms appeared. The audience listened in complete silence. Jessica watched too, her hands folded in her lap, her expression stunned. When Sarah ended the speech with, "Innovation should be measured not in profits but in lives saved," the room erupted. Everyone stood again. Cameras flashed. Sarah gave a small nod. Jessica remained standing but didn't clap. During the Q&A session, executives fired questions at her. About IPO timing, expansion plans, international markets. Sarah answered each one with practiced ease. As she spoke, she noticed Jessica whispering urgently to her colleague, who was now typing Sarah's name into their phone. The colleague's eyes widened as they scrolled. Jessica swallowed hard and stared back at the stage like she was seeing a stranger. When the final round of applause ended and Sarah exited backstage, the conference director said, "You're trending on healthcare tech Twitter." Sarah smiled politely, but all she could think about was her sister in row 7. At the networking reception, Sarah was surrounded instantly. Reporters asking for interviews, hospital executives requesting meetings, investors offering business cards. She moved gracefully through the crowd, answering questions and shaking hands. At 11:47, she spotted Jessica near the LifeBridge booth. Jessica stood completely still, reading the posters describing the system's success stories. Sarah walked over quietly. "Hi, Jessica." Jessica looked up slowly, her face pale. "So, this is what you do?" Sarah nodded. "Yes. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company?" Sarah corrected softly, 1.8 billion last valuation. Jessica blinked rapidly, struggling to process everything. "You never told us," Jessica whispered. "Not once." Sarah replied gently, "You never asked." Jessica stepped closer. "Sarah, we talked about careers all the time. I told you about my team, my budget, my promotions. And you just sat there letting us think you had nothing going on." Sarah kept her voice steady. "Every time I tried to explain, you changed the subject. You assumed I had a small job, so I stopped correcting you." Jessica pressed her lips together. "If you had told me you were a CEO, I wouldn't have believed you." Sarah smiled sadly. "Exactly." A man in a suit approached them. "Mississippi Lane, I'm from Johnson & Johnson. We'd love to discuss a potential acquisition." Sarah nodded professionally. "Of course." She turned back to Jessica. "I have to take this meeting. We can talk later." Jessica nodded weakly, unable to form words. Sarah stepped away into a conversation about a possible $3 billion acquisition offer. Behind her, Jessica stood alone by the booth, staring at a photo of a grandmother saved by LifeBridge's early detection system. It was the first time Jessica truly understood what her sister had built, and how little she ever knew. The rest of the conference moved like a storm around Sarah. She moderated panels, joined private roundtables, and signed 12 non-disclosure agreements for new partnership talks. Everywhere she went, people stopped her to praise her presentation. She spotted Jessica a few times in the audience during different sessions, but Jessica never approached her. She kept close to her colleagues, quiet and thoughtful. On the final afternoon, Sarah boarded her flight back to San Francisco. When the plane leveled out, her phone buzzed. 17 unread messages from the family chat. Questions, shock, confusion, admiration. But none from Jessica. Sunday came with an invitation. "Sarah, can you join us for dinner at 5 p.m.? We need to talk." When she arrived, everyone was already seated. No pot roast this time. Italian takeout from their old Celebration restaurant. Her father cleared his throat. "Sarah, we owe you an apology." Sarah didn't respond, letting the silence fill the room. Her mother continued softly, "We had no idea what you accomplished." "If we had known," Sarah stopped her gently, "you would have treated me differently." No one spoke. They all knew she was right. Respect had always been conditional in this house. Her brother tried to argue. "We always included you." Sarah looked at him calmly. "You held Jessica's promotion dinner on the night of my board meeting. Then you complained I didn't prioritize family." Her mother whispered, "We didn't understand your work." Sarah replied, "I explained exactly as much as you let me. Every time I tried to talk about a project, the topic changed. Every time I began to share, Someone interrupted to talk about Jessica's job. Jessica wiped her eyes silently. Sarah wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of being reduced to assumptions and silence at her own family table. Finally, her father said softly, "We were wrong. Completely wrong." Sarah nodded. "I appreciate the apology. But I need something honest from all of you." They waited. She continued, "Stop assuming. Start asking." Her mother swallowed. "Can we start over? Really start over?" Sarah breathed out slowly. "Yes. If we're honest this time." Her father leaned closer. "Then tell us everything. Tell us about your company. Tell us what you've actually built." It felt strange being invited to speak after so many years of being spoken over. But Sarah accepted. She opened her laptop and began from the beginning. She told them about the warehouse nights, the early prototypes, the dozens of failed sensor tests, the moment the first algorithm worked, and the day the FDA granted approval. She explained contracts, hiring, patent battles, and hospital partnerships. She told them about the lives saved, grandparents, teachers, new mothers, people who were alive because LifeBridge caught something early. They listened without interrupting. Derek whispered, "I'm sorry I made jokes about managing 15 people." Jessica cried quietly. "I bragged about my salary, while you were making, what were you making?" Sarah smiled kindly. "More than enough." Her father asked gently, "Are you a millionaire?" Sarah nodded. "Yes." He stared for a moment. "How much of a millionaire?" Sarah gave a tired smile. "Does the number actually matter?" He exhaled. "I guess not." They ate in silence for a moment, letting the truth settle. Then Jessica lifted her head. "My team couldn't stop talking about you at the conference. My boss asked if I could introduce him to you." Sarah replied, "You can. If you want." Jessica blinked. "Really? You're my sister," Sarah said. "I'll always support you. You just never asked before." 3 months later, Jessica called unexpectedly. Her voice was shaky. "Sarah, can you talk?" Sarah sat up. "Of course. What's wrong?" Jessica sighed. "I'm thinking of leaving my job." Sarah was surprised. "Why?" Jessica paused. "Because at that conference I realized something. I keep climbing the ladder at my company, but I never asked if it's the right ladder. I've been chasing titles, not purpose." Sarah listened quietly as Jessica said, "I want to build something meaningful too. Like you did. Not the same thing, but something that matters." It was the most vulnerable Jessica had ever been. "What direction are you thinking about?" Sarah asked. Jessica let out a small laugh. "That's the problem. I don't know yet. But I want to figure it out without comparing myself to you or Derek." Sarah smiled. "That's a good start." Jessica hesitated. "Will you help me, not with money, not with connections, just advice?" Sarah answered immediately, "Anytime." They spoke for an hour about Jessica's strengths, the projects she enjoyed, and ideas she wanted to explore. For the first time in years, the conversation wasn't competition. It was connection. It felt like repairing a bridge both had neglected. 6 months later, LifeBridge announced its Series E round. $500 million raised, $3.2 billion valuation. The press coverage exploded. Investors called nonstop. Hospital systems requested meetings. An hour after the announcement, the family group chat lit up. Her mother, "We saw the news. Congratulations." Her father, "So proud of you, sweetheart." Derek, "This is unbelievable." Sarah, $3.2 billion? And then Jessica wrote, "Not surprised. You deserve every bit of it." Red heart, Sarah smiled at her phone. For once, the messages felt genuine, not fueled by comparison but admiration. 2 years later, LifeBridge went public. Sarah stood on the trading floor in New York in front of cameras and reporters. Her parents wore LifeBridge t-shirts. Derek held his phone up, recording everything. Jessica stood beside Sarah, squeezing her hand. When the opening bell rang and the crowd cheered, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected. Not pride, not victory, but peace. That night at dinner in Tribeca, her mother said, "I can't believe this is our life now." Sarah replied gently, "It's my life. You're welcome in it, but it's mine." Her mother nodded. "I'm proud of you." And this time Sarah believed her. In the months following the IPO, Sarah adjusted to a new rhythm of life. Press interviews, board meetings, global expansion plans. Yet something mattered even more. Her family had finally begun to ask questions. Real questions. One evening her father called and said, "Sarah, can you explain this article about predictive health systems? I want to understand it." She spent 20 minutes walking him through the basics. "Wow," he whispered, "your work saves people." Another time her mother asked, "Do you ever get scared with this responsibility?" Sarah smiled. "Every day. But purpose makes the fear manageable." Jessica, meanwhile, had started exploring new career paths. She left her old company and joined a smaller healthcare startup. Not for the title but for the mission. She called Sarah one night and said, "It feels strange starting over, but in a good way." Sarah encouraged her. Meaningful work rarely starts comfortable. They met for lunch often, something they'd never done before. Jessica would bring ideas and questions and Sarah would offer calm guidance. Their relationship, once heavy with comparisons, slowly became easy. Supportive. It wasn't perfect, but it was no longer held together by assumptions and silence. Derek changed too, though more quietly. One afternoon he called Sarah and said, "I bragged about managing 15 people while you were managing 400. I feel stupid." Sarah laughed softly. "You didn't know." He replied, "That's the point. I didn't even try to know." Over time he began sending her articles about leadership or healthcare innovations, adding, "Thought you'd find this interesting." For Sarah, these small gestures mattered more than any apology. They showed effort, something she had waited years to see. Her family was learning to see her, really see her, beyond the labels they once assigned. But healing wasn't instant. One Sunday dinner her mother slipped and said, "Jessica, tell us about your new title." "Oh, and Sarah, how's whatever you're doing?" The room went quiet. Jessica put down her fork. "Mom, she runs an entire company. A global company. Please don't talk about her like that." Their mother flushed. "I didn't mean," Jessica interrupted gently. "I know. But we're not doing the old habits anymore." Sarah didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Seeing Jessica defend her willingly, without jealousy, without comparison, meant more than she could express. Change had finally taken root. A year later, Sarah spoke at another conference, this time in London. As she stepped off the stage, her phone vibrated. A message from Jessica. "Just watched the live stream. You were incredible. Proud of you every day." Another message from Derek followed. "Never doubted you for a second." Sarah smiled at the obvious lie but appreciated the sentiment. Later that night, she sat by her hotel window overlooking the Thames and felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel: contentment. Her success finally existed without the weight of needing to be understood, and her family finally existed without the weight of comparing her. When she returned home, her parents invited her to dinner. This time her mother did cook pot roast, the old familiar meal, but something was different. Her mother placed a small envelope beside Sarah's plate. "What's this?" Sarah asked. Her mother said, "A thank you. Not for the money, not for the success, but for your patience." Inside was a handwritten note. "We didn't know how to see you. Thank you for giving us another chance." Sarah read it slowly, her throat tightening. For years she'd wanted recognition. But this, being understood finally, felt like the real milestone. As the years passed, LifeBridge grew to serve hundreds of hospitals worldwide. Reports arrived weekly. Lives saved, families reunited, emergencies prevented. Sarah still worked long hours, still faced pressure, still made impossible decisions. But now she no longer carried the burden alone. Her family checked in often. Her father would say, "Don't forget to rest." Her mother would send food to her office. Jessica would drop by with coffee and updates on her own new projects. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, and trying had rebuilt something that once felt permanently broken. One evening, Sarah attended a gala honoring innovators in medicine. As she walked onto the stage to receive an award, she saw her family standing at the back of the room, clapping, smiling, cheering. Her mother wiped her eyes. Jessica placed a hand over her heart. Derek gave her a thumbs up. It wasn't the applause from strangers that moved her, it was theirs. Later, her father hugged her tightly and said, "You changed the world, Sarah." She responded, "No, Dad. We changed too." In that moment, she realized the journey wasn't just about success. It was about connection. Years earlier, she had wondered whether her family would ever respect her without knowing her accomplishments. Now she realized they respected her because they finally knew her. Not the assumptions, not the quiet girl in the corner at dinner, not the misunderstood sister with the small tech job. They saw her ambition, her discipline, her sacrifices, and her heart. And Sarah saw something too. Her family hadn't been cruel, just blind. They'd been trapped in their own narrow definitions of success. But people can grow when they choose to listen. And they had chosen. One Sunday afternoon, Sarah sat with her family on the back porch of her parents' home. The sun was warm, the air soft, and laughter floated easily between them. No competition. No assumptions. No silence. Her mother touched her hand and said, "We're proud of the woman you are." Sarah looked at each of them and smiled. "I'm proud of us too." For the first time in her life she felt completely seen, both for her brilliance and her humanity. She had built a billion-dollar company, saved thousands of lives, and stood on global stages. But this, being understood by the people she loved, was the victory that mattered most.